All right. So we have a lot to cover. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here and joining us today. Katie and I are thrilled to have you for our Jumpstart market research. Then Brent, if anybody hasn't been able to take the quiz, we'll touch on that in just a little bit as well. But we are thrilled to have you here for our How to Jumpstart Market Research webinar. This is something that Katie and I are incredibly passionate about. It is quite honestly something that we have been living and breathing our entire lives, having come from a family business in this space. But we believe at our core that every voice matters. We believe that people matter. They want to be seen, heard, and part of the process of different things. So I do not take it, and we both do not take it lightly, that we are in a profession where we are able to connect with people on a daily basis to understand what it is that they've going on in their lives, and to be able to connect them to businesses, organizations, nonprofits, in order to make products, services, experiences better. So we appreciate you for being here, and we've got a lot to share. So 2 notes that I want to just be able to touch on first. One, we are recording this webinar. And so if you are interested in having a replay of this at the end, feel free. We'll have our contact information, but most of you, I'm assuming, have it. But email us and we'll shoot you over a recording that you can watch again later if for any reason you're not able to stay till the end or want to share it with anyone. And 2, just kind of some talking points or some housekeeping points is if you have any questions throughout it at the bottom, utilize the Q&A section down there. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. We've got Brent on the background or in the background for us that he'll be monitoring those that we'll answer at the end if we have time. And if not, we'll answer them in upcoming sessions as we go forward. So we'll jump right in. All right. So hello, I'm Jenny Dinnan, and I'm excited to be here. So I am, just a little bit about me I want to share. So I am a wife and a mom. This is my daughter, Taylor, a few years ago. She's a little bit bigger now, but this was her coming to work with me one day on the many days that our kids seem to have off of school. So juggling mom life, work life going on. I'm also a daughter, a twin sister. For anyone that doesn't know, this is my twin sister, Katie, that's in this screen next to me here. And I bring that up too because of family business owners. So we run this business together. So we are business owners. We run McKinsey Corporation and Next Gen Collaborative. I'm a chess player, learned from my grandpa and taught my daughter how to play. A continual learner. I'm a new idea advocate. Actually, I have an idea jar over here that Katie gave me because I have so many of them. Big and small company experience. We'll share some as we go throughout this presentation of how we've incorporated market research in some of the work we've done. A nonprofit advocate, a professional multitasker, I could say. So why am I sharing a lot? One, so that you know who we are as we're going in here, but 2, really, it's a reminder that our customers, our prospects, the people at which we serve are complex, complicated, and multifaceted. We are not just one thing. We are a lot of things, and typically we're doing them all at once.
So thank you. I am Katie, and just like Jenny, I am a wife and a mom. I have 2 girls. One is turning 14 on Monday, and the other one is turning 18 in a couple weeks. So we're in an exciting chapter in life. I am a daughter. I am a twin sister. And as Jenny said, co-owner of McKinsey and co-founder, co-owner of Next Gen Collaborative. I'm an adventure seeker. I recently got back from a 16-day trek to Mount Everest base camp. So I was in Nepal for 20 days. It was an amazing experience for me. I am a next gen champion, really extremely passionate, which goes into the next one there of personal growth coach, really passionate about helping next gen leaders really find their voice and start to figure out what they want their personal legacy to be, not only in the family business space, how to integrate that legacy concept into that, but also just for next gen leaders in general, being able to really map out what the vision for their future is. I'm a nonprofit advocate, just like Jenny. I just finished up chairing a $15 million capital campaign for a nonprofit here in Orange County. I'm a certified futurist, so certified strategic foresight practitioner, and absolutely love the idea of envisioning the multiple possibilities for the future that exists out there, and then public speaker. And so really the biggest thing here is, as Jenny said, our customers are multifaceted. And if we look at just continue looking at the basic demographics, you would think that Jenny and I would be very similar, especially since we are twins. I always say this is all mine, and Jenny's is naturally straight. And so you can even see just by looking at us that basic demographics doesn't tell you the whole story. And I think that our biggest thing really for us to be able to share here is that opportunity to really get to know people on a deeper level. Because I promise you, you will not find my sister trekking on the trails of Nepal with me.
No, thank you.
And we truly believe, again, that if we understand our customers on that deeply and genuine level, that right there is your differentiator as a business. And we understand that, needing to be able to segment people and put them into buckets for efficiency from marketing strategy standpoints, that overall we need to eventually get to that spot. But if we can take the time and map it into our longer term strategies to be able to really go deep and dig in and get to really know people, that's that opportunity to really change that engagement level with our consumers and to really start building true levels of brand loyalty.
So that we're all on the same page today and what we're talking about, I wanted to at least start out with defining market research. What do we mean by that? And so simply put, the process market research, the process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting information about our customers, competition, and the industry as a whole, right? So while that's the technical term of what we're saying here, I want to be able to dig in here and say, what does that really mean? What can this mean when lived up to its full potential? So what this really means, it can be a gateway into understanding the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of those that your organization is serving. And really, if we think about it, how exciting is that? We don't have to sit around anymore, because I know we've all done this, saying, I wonder what our customers want. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? This is a way to connect directly with them and getting those answers to you. This is an opportunity to strengthen our relationships and conveying our appreciation, right? And how much they matter to you. As Katie said, I believe that the gift of listening to someone and truly listening to them and asking for their feedback, that is a perfect way of strengthening your relationship and appreciation. It's a launch point, having some of these projects into expanding market share, evolving services, opportunities. When we listen to our customers and really dig into the feedback that they're giving us, they're going to tell us where to serve them, and the opportunities are endless of what to do when we start listening and opening up. And this is really how to support a human-centric brand building company in this ever-changing world. Almost every single conversation that I have with businesses these days, they're saying that they want to be customer-focused and they want to stay relevant in the future. This is the answer. So I'm excited that you're here with us today in order to dig in. And so one or two slides of getting our mindset shift here, but thinking also of who can benefit from market research. Right. And it's really everyone can benefit from it. We typically are working with sales and marketing teams as we're putting together strategies so we can maximize our efforts for marketing pieces, sales efforts, those types of things. So we can be doing all sorts of, and just listed, so I'm not going to read all of them to you, but customer personas, understanding the journey maps, where are people going through, sales and marketing can use that. But internal operations and reducing risk is huge on the inside of what is working. How's our customer experience going? What are the touch points, those pain points that customers are feeling? How can we streamline those and really saving resources along the way? And I put here also that customers and prospects, they benefit as well. When we have this two-way conversation, and that's what I want to make sure that we're reiterating here with them, then increased satisfaction, having personalized services. We've all got those generic pieces that come in the mail and we don't want them. So how can then our customers and prospects benefit from that as well? And one final touch point I'll say on this, a really big piece. So I had said in the beginning that I have small and big experience throughout our career here. And while I started data entering customer sat surveys in to elementary school, but probably in high school. One of my first main jobs was for HD Supply. So Home Depot, it was on the B2B side. And my boss at the time, Cherish, was incredible and the best manager out there. And here's the deal. She said something to us, which was so important while I was working in my cubicle down in San Diego, creating 2 to 4 page flyers for products that I knew nothing about, is that most of the time our customers are not us, right? So we need to remember that we might not be selling to just because we like something and we're making assumptions based on our own experience. It might not be that way. So I was selling things like ice melt, pool supplies, HVAC units. I learned a lot about all of those, to maintenance guys that were servicing hotels, hospitals, those types of things. So I needed to go out. We did ride-alongs. We did stakeholder interviews. We did a lot of surveys so we can understand who these people were. And we kept pictures in our cubicles of the people that we were serving. So that's what we're doing here, is remembering that our ideal customer might not be us. If it is, that makes it a whole lot easier. But let's remember who we're serving on the back end.
All right, so let's dig into meat here. And along the way too, is just as a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll try to stop along the way, or we'll address them at the very end. But we're going to be covering how to clarify objectives, choosing some methodologies, identifying our target audience, questionnaire development, results implementations, and tips and tricks. So high level here through all of these, and we can definitely loop back after this call if there's any more detailed things that you want to dig into, but we're excited to be able to get into the meat of the topic today. So really, starting first and foremost, every project that we do with our clients and that we would suggest for anybody is always starting by clearly identifying what your objectives are. And that really there's like the difference between the reasons of why you're doing that survey. So that's going to be something more abstract of we want to understand the customer life cycle, or we want to understand the needs and wants from our clients or our customers or prospects. And then, but we really like to be able to go a little bit deeper into saying, but what is the research question for this specific survey? So again, and we'll talk about this in just a second, we want to be able to look at different survey opportunities over the life cycle of our customer. And so what is the research question that we want to be able to say here? So an example of what that could be is we want to be able to identify exactly along that journey where the decision-making process is happening. And or another example would be, does our value proposition align with what our customer thinks we're offering? As just some different examples. So taking it from the abstract and getting a bit more specific. And then you also always want to make sure that your overarching objectives of your research project are in alignment back up to your business goals and objectives and the overarching initiatives. Another part of clarifying your objectives is really being able to say, what are our hypotheses or assumptions or our opinions that we have for the stakeholders who are part of the conversation. So not just your group or the committee that's putting together this research project, but even going all the way up to the top level executive stakeholders. If you're going to be presenting results up, you want to be able to understand what their established hypothesis or assumptions are, so that when we always kind of like to say, start with the end in mind, when you're taking your results back to them and doing a larger presentation, if you don't have an understanding of what their assumptions are, you're not able to address those as a part of that presentation. So being able to have those assumptions at the very beginning is going to be able to really, truly help you be able to start crafting the survey to be able to confirm or find information that might contradict what some of those hypotheses are. And then finally, around this kind of objection setting is really being able to get it as specific as possible. So one of the big things that we talk a lot about, and we'll say this many times throughout the next 40 minutes, is really being able to respect the time of the humans who are taking the survey and stopping their life to be able to give you feedback. And so if you have a way of already knowing the answer to the question that you're wanting to put in your research survey, don't ask that question again, or ask it in a way to be able to validate if that belief possibly is still true or something like that. But again, if you already know the information, then don't use that time and that space on that survey to be able to ask them again. Use it to be able to ask deeper or more clarifying questions. And then another thing too that we really like to talk about is, as a part of your objection setting and really being able to look at the whole life cycle of a research project, start saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to take action on the results that we're getting? So with every question that you start to define and add into your survey process, is being able to then say, what action, if we get a positive or a negative response to this question, what do we think that we want to be doing? And again, even if like there's opportunities where the results may impact different departments, can you get stakeholders from those departments to be a part of your planning committee so that you're getting buy-in from the very beginning on how the results will be able to be used in the back end? And a big thing that we hear all the time is, or a common roadblock is really too many objectives. If we try to kitchen sink the survey, because one, we have the attention of the respondents or our target audience, and second, we have one budget. And that really is a big thing. We have one budget for the year on being able to do a survey. Then we want to be able to put as many ideas in there as possible. But the biggest thing is remembering, would you take a survey that is all meandering and covering all these different topics? And I know I personally wouldn't. And so I think we have to remember that we need to be mindful of what we're putting into this survey. And I think on this next slide here, Jen, we really talk a lot about being able to understand what the whole journey is of your customers and prospects. Where are they coming in and learning about your product, all the way through product usage? And then being able to really say, what are the right people, or how do we ask the right people the right questions at the right time? And being able to tie that, overlaying that with your objectives and the reason of why you're doing your survey is going to be able to help you be more systematic in the types of questions that you want to ask at one specific time. And again, even with this, if you have somebody who just recently purchased your product and you're asking them usage questions of saying, how has the product, acted or produced results for you in 90 days, you don't want to ask that people in the very beginning of their life cycle with you. So again, you want to be able to be really specific about what you're trying to dig into, to be able to say, who should you be asking, again, what questions at what time?
I love that. I know, Kate, you're going to talk a little bit more about audience in just a little bit and how we figure out who's in our sample. But I think that's a really good point of we're always saying the right question at the right time to the right people. So one, I just wanted to share also, we had just recently worked with Jane Pauley Community Health Center, who is fantastic, a great client of ours out in Indiana. And we were brought in, we did a market research 101, but they were asking about one specific survey in the beginning, but then really them step back and say, hey, listen, we want to have a research strategy, what Kate was talking about of having this. And afterwards, I thought this was just a clarified what the benefits of doing something like this that they had written in here, their COO, but really through the exercises that we did with their key executives, helping them articulate and understand all of the challenges that their patients and their population, their prospects had. They served a wide variety of constituents in their community. It created clarity for the stakeholders, right, of the information that they currently had. And then where they needed to be able to fill in the gaps so that we could put together that strategy for them, and having now this holistic plan so that they can better serve the community. That's what we want to be able to do, is look at these stakeholder opportunities as we're having a holistic plan and collecting information along the way where it makes sense.
Thanks for sharing that one, Jen. And I think it's really good to be able to see it in real life, how it's coming to life there. So our next section here is about choosing methodologies. And so there's really the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. At a macro level, I like to say quantitative is kind of quantity. Think about surveys that are more to validate at scale, that are benchmarking, more statistics, numerical data that's going to be able to do that. In quantitative studies, you definitely can have open-ended questions, so you can have text analysis and that types of things. But it's something that we really think of if you're really shooting to be able to get 250, 500, or 1,000 responses. That's going to be something that's more of your quantitative research project. And qualitative is really what we kind of say is quality, which quantitative definitely brings quality results 100% of the time, but it's just trying to think about these quick little ways to be able to think about the difference. Qualitative is more conversational, focus groups or stakeholder interviews, where you can really go a lot deeper into different types of question sets, being able to ask people more questions about why they thought something, or if they can give more clarifying examples or stories where you can start getting that rich data that comes out of that. And one of the questions we get a lot of the times is, how do I know which style I should be able to use? And the answer that I never like giving, but it's always the right one, is it really depends. And so an example of how you can intermix things, I mean, some of it again is wanting to go back to what your overarching objective or reason and research questions are. If you're doing a ongoing customer satisfaction program, let's say that's a quantitative type study. That's something that you're sending out every single time to each new customer, and or if you do a service follow-up or something like that, that's an ongoing type of program that then you're being able to continually add results and questions in there. If you're doing trackers or brand studies, those would be quantitative research that goes into that. But then we've used, where we're doing an integrated approach, where sometimes we'll use qualitative research at the very beginning. If we're finding that we actually have multiple objectives or multiple research questions that we don't exactly know where we want to go deep in terms of being able to go at scale, we'll start by doing some stakeholder interviews with key customers or key prospects, depending on the audience. We'll get into some audience things in a second here. And so we'll do that to be able to help us more clearly define what our research questions should be. Then we'll go and do a quantitative study. And then a lot of times we'll actually end with a qualitative study as well, where we'll either put a question into the quantitative one, asking if respondents are open to a follow-up stakeholder interview, that they're willing to go deeper into some of their responses, and or they're willing to, or we would go out to a different target group to be able to do something and ask some validating questions there. So it really does depend. And so we'll be able to, I think our biggest note here would be go back to looking at what your research objective is, and then start deciding which methodology is the right one for you. I do see also that we have a question here. I'm going to just try to answer it, and Jen, you can jump in if you have a thought, because I think it's relevant kind of to this section that we're in, and asking if there's a recommended length for a customer satisfaction survey versus an insights or informational gathering survey. And I think with that one, I would say, again, it depends. I'm going to say, like, let's say with the customer satisfaction survey. So we do an ongoing customer satisfaction program for a client of ours in the power sports industry. They have multiple surveys that go along with that. One is the initial sales experience. And then going with that, let's say they're specifically monitoring and measuring what the experience is with the dealership. So that's where the OEM is monitoring what the dealership kind of experience is, and then being able to gather information. So then on that customer sat program, we're actually being very specific of only asking questions of what that sales experience was, if the salespeople were knowledgeable, what the dealership experience was like. And so that survey really probably has about, I don't know, 10 to 12 questions, because it's very specific to the clearly defined objective. There's then follow-up surveys that are a part of that customer sat that's then related to service type work. And then they have different surveys that go out that's around product usage. So again, I know that that's not a specific answer to say what is the recommended length. The biggest thing is, again, not kitchen sinking your surveys, even if it's customer sat. So you really want to be very specific about the purpose of the survey that's going out. I think the biggest thing is wanting to be able to say, how many questions do we think is realistic for people to be able to do? Something to think about as well is how many open ends are you putting in there? If there are questions where you're picking, like on the satisfaction scale, which Jenny will get into some of those things about the different types of question sets. You can go through those survey questions a lot faster than things where you're wanting people to be able to really do some open-ended responses. And so really, I'd say, I think anything longer than maybe 20 questions could be a little too much. So we do have a client who actually has like a 7-page survey, so paper survey. So it is a long one, and that is a passionate customer base who's willing to invest their time into doing that. But hopefully that gave you a little bit of insights into kind of where to go with that, but we can definitely talk offline to be able to come up with some more.
Got a couple things coming up here in just a minute that might answer that as well.
Awesome. All right, so switching back, into a tip that we usually also talk a lot about is how to incorporate secondary research into your planning process. So secondary research is really kind of information that's readily available out there. So there are industry surveys, there are articles, things you can pick up through social listening. Being able to find out during that objection setting and really being able to set the framework for your research project in general. Again, how can we leverage information that's already there so that when we are getting the valuable attention from our respondents, that we're being able to ask them questions that we aren't able to find those answers other places. Again, that's the value of having proprietary research and being able to like own that that research that's there. But if you can integrate the secondary on the front end and as well on the back end, once you are doing your analysis and your report generation, you can start incorporating other reports or other research projects that either validate or are very similar to what you're doing. It helps with your story as you're going and sharing the findings with different stakeholding groups within your organization. All right, so we are switching topics now a bit more from that overarching beginning planning time into survey logistics. And so getting into identifying our target audiences. So again, and I keep repeating, so I hope that you're understanding that why we're doing that. But being able to go back to your overarching objective, research reason and research questions is going to help identify who your target audience is. So do you want to be talking to your existing customers? That would be questions that are around customer experience, the buying journey, those types of things. Do you want to go into prospects or online panels? So if they're thinking more around brand awareness, brand perception, being able to understand how your brand is seen in the broader market, you can be able to do those types of studies where you're being able to do something. We talk a lot about, do you want to do a branded study or a blind study? So branded being that the survey is going out in your company name with your logo, your feel, your vibe, your tone. Or do you want to do a blind one where either it's in partnership with a third-party research company or even through a panel, you don't really know who, again, is the one who's doing that. In those types of situations, you'd be able to ask question sets out to a broader prospect or community at large to say, when you think about XYZ situation, product, or we recently did one with a nonprofit that was doing some work in family homelessness. And we wanted to understand the community's perception of family homelessness in general, and then understand the community's perception of who's solving for that issue. So that was, again, then one that we helped them with as a blind study. So it wasn't their organization. And then we did a list of different organizations in the local community and said, who do you think is solving for this problem? And even with that, it was really interesting that one of the number one organizations that came up, our client said that's not one of our competitors and they aren't actually solving for that problem. The thing that was actually interesting with that, though, is the general population does believe that. So then they actually were able to use that to be able to start help informing their marketing standpoint so that then they can do messaging that's helping to change the community's perception of who's solving for that. So again, thinking about our audiences, we want to be able to say, what is our overarching research question? When we think about our existing customers, again, we want to be able to say, we don't want to send a survey out to every single one of our customers. We want to be able to think about what part of the journey we're wanting to ask information about, and then we can segment our customer list to be able to target just that audience specifically.
I think that's just one of the biggest things, Kate, on the back end of, because is it based on the product that they have? And this is where then we can be asking questions about where they are in segmenting on the back end. But if we're asking questions and we're presenting results at the end, we want to make sure that the people that we ask are the relevant people that should be asked and included for this sample.
And then another one thing here, a common question that we get is, how many responses do I need? And really, again, coming back to what we keep repeating is every single person who responds to your survey is someone who's pausing their own personal life to be able to take 10 plus minutes or something to be able to give information and feedback to help you improve your organization. So we truly believe that every voice matters, every response matters. Again, we understand that there needs to be certain types of things to make survey results statistically valid and for use for different segmentation reasons and all of that. And so Jenny's going to talk a little bit too about that as we get going. But the biggest thing is we truly believe that you should be going into this process excited to be able to see the responses of every single survey that you get back.
So I know I mentioned quickly too, growing up at data entry and customer satisfaction surveys, and we did that back in high school for a large power sports client. And while it maybe was not the most exciting job in high school, while some of our friends were out at the beach and wild rivers and some other things, we grew up locally. One of my favorite things that would happen is when the surveys would come back in is when they would share about their experience and include pictures. We had a little bulletin board up at the office, and we would put up the pictures. And I remember specifically, well, it wasn't this one, but I remember somebody multiple people sending in pictures of their families on their boats, their dog on their jet ski, and they were sharing these experiences. And I think that was part of also remembering that there were people on the other side of the surveys that we're sending out. And I'll just say too, on that note, sometimes we'll get, there'll be positive and negative responses that come in. I would lean into your positive responses as we're getting, these can be turned into brand ambassadors, right? Like, how do we lean into these guys? Someone that sends in a picture of himself with his dog on a product, they should be championed, lean in. How can we use them as ambassadors? On the flip side, people that are taking their time to provide feedback that might not be as fantastic, that we might not want to hear, it's a good reminder that very few people send in their responses and take the time. A lot of people are sharing it with their friends, colleagues, and otherwise. So we want to be able to take note of what this is and starting to see patterns and trends. On the note, though, because it could be an entire hour-long presentation of just determining the exact right sample size for a survey of where it is, I will just say that we can get in there, but there are amazing, easy, simple calculators online. So calculating sample size. This one came in, we just Googled, this is on Qualtrics, which is a great platform that we use, but a sample size calculator. I put this example up here just because I wanted to show what you're going to be able to want to take a look at. Your sample size, that's the number of people that are in your survey, right? Or your study that you're doing. We want to take a look first to say, what is the population that's out there, right? If we're serving all of Orange County, we're in California, if we're serving all of our customers, we want to know what the overall population is. And then knowing that realistically, and it never happens, you're not going to be able to serve every single one of our customers or people in the population. So we're going to be doing a randomized sample of who's in here. So given our population size in these two examples, we have 1,000 population size on the left, right, whichever side is popping up here, and we've got 10,000 on the second one. So we're going to go into our confidence level. How confident are we in the results that were coming back? 95% is the most common use. You can bump that up to 99% confidence level. We can have our margin of error. So where are we in our plus or minus? But then down below, it'll automatically give you, it's not on the back end that we can get in here, but it'll give you your ideal sample size. So in this example, I just wanted to share too, given that our confidence level and our margin, we're staying the same at 95 and 5%, we had 1,000 or 10,000. It's showing us our ideal sample size that we want to be able to have is 278 or 370. This will take, and again, this can go in for a while, but if you're wanting to segment into different groups, that could go up as well. But simple, easy to get started if we're at the beginning projects of this. Okay, getting into some of the nuts and bolts of survey questions and where we are. So as Kate said, I know a lot of people will jump right into questionnaire development of, hey, we should do a survey, jump right into analyzing questions. And the reason why we took such a long time in the beginning, or a bit of time in the beginning, to make sure that we're clear on our overall reason, objective, everything, it makes it easier coming back into our questionnaire development, that we're crystal clear on what we're testing, hypothesis, those type of things. Let's make sure, though, in the beginning that we are questions. We want to make sure that our questions are clear, that they're unbiased, and that they're relevant to the topic that we're talking about. We want to make sure that we're not, what are we not doing in our survey questions? We're not leading and loaded, they're not ambiguous, or they're not double barrel. So what do I mean by that in just a couple, just quick examples, simple examples? Leading, we want to make sure that we don't have leading questions. Kind of an example here of, we're asking something of, don't you agree that exercise is the most effective way to lose weight, right? That's a question that we can have in there and they can answer yes or no. Really, I want to make sure that, and so what we have here is we're suggesting of how they should be answering, right? We're prompting them that, hey, you should agree. Don't you agree with, or if we're starting something with, fact is, this is what's happening. What do you think? So we don't want to be leading people because that's not what we're doing here in these surveys. We want to make sure that we're not ambiguous of terms that we're using. You know, we just recently did a survey with one of our favorite, or one of our clients, a family business client that we have, and we wanted to answer because we were talking generally of, are they in a family business? What do they think about family businesses? We want to make sure that we're defining that term right away. Are you a family business? We wanted to define what we meant by that, kind of how I defined market research in the beginning. So we want to make sure, does this make sense? There are times, I will just say, of the ambiguous is there opportunities where you want to know what people think? If you want to say, I know Kate, we had worked on a client and we wanted to know what they thought for an organization, participatory organization, of what does engagement mean to you? How do we want to be engaged? What does engagement mean to you? And that was an open-ended type of question. So certain times, but we want to make sure if we're asking, do you agree or don't agree? There's no ambiguity. That third point here, double-barreled. I just want to be 100% clear of what that is. That means that we're not asking two questions at the same time in a question. And what I mean, an example, I just kind of wrote one this morning, but example of that, a double barrel. How does eating ice cream every night affect children's sleeping patterns and mental health, right? I got kids that love eating ice cream every night. If you're asking a question of how does XYZ affect this and this, and you're asking that in one question, we don't want to do that. We want to separate it out. We want to make sure that we're asking one question at a time and that we're not having someone say, well, I don't know, it depends. I think it does this, but it doesn't do this. So we want to ask one question in each. It's called double barrel. We don't want to do that. A laundry list of examples of that we could be going in, but I want to make sure we're going through here. Other pieces as we're putting together our surveys. So we want to make sure that the structure, and this goes back to I think the question of how many survey questions should be in. Another way of getting around that, one, and just a point on that, is this is a relationship that we're building. This is should not be a one and done. This goes back to Katie's entire research strategy. We want to be building up and creating a relationship with someone so we don't have to ask everything in the beginning. If you have not had a relationship with people and asking questions, I'd keep your survey shorter, to the point, and figure out. But logical flow. So many times we as the researchers or internal the company spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about the questions that we have in here. We've gone through them a lot. We need to remember that our respondent, it's going to be the first time that they're seeing this. So we want to make sure that it makes sense, that the flow, that we're grouping related questions together, we're not popping around, that it makes sense. We want to give them a roadmap, kind of like in our presentation here today, across the bottom. Right now, we're in the questionnaire section. I think it's fantastic when we let people know in the survey platform how long they've been in there. You're 50% of the way through, or we're in this section asking about your usage. We're now in the demographic type of questions section. So give them a roadmap. You can put that in at the top. Another really big thing is doing intros to each section. Let people know and include them into the process here of how or why we're asking these types of questions. Short and simple, but we're really interested in finding out how you utilize your XYZ. What's happening here? Give them some context, and that'll lead them into and get them in the right space. Incorporating branching. This again goes out to if somebody says, hey, I was unsatisfied with this, let's branch them out and find out why. We can branch them out if they've got a certain product, and then we can lead them back together again. In a minute, most of the survey platforms, if you're doing this yourself, will help with branching and be able to come back with those. But let's make sure that we're leveraging all of those different pieces. All right, make sure where we are with time. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through these. We might have some tools and tricks at the end of this or afterwards that we can follow up with some more details. But there are a tremendous amount of survey types of questions. So I just want to touch on a few different pieces of what these are. And I'm sure everyone's taken surveys, understands them. But we've got a couple different pieces here. We've got our Likert scale. This is where we're measuring the degree of agreement to disagreement. So it's, and actually, I'm just going to move forward here too. So I've got 3 different ones, but we've got these Likert scales where we've got discrete. Think about the types of questions like somewhat agree, kind of agree, neutral, don't agree, those types of things, right? We're measuring along the way of what we are, and this can measure nuances and is really good on the back end for being able to figure out how many people, what % of people are extremely satisfied, not satisfied. This is like our net promoter score. The would you recommend? That's on a 0 to 10 scale, thinking of that as a Likert scale. We've got sliders that we can be using. This is when people can move it across and there aren't specific nuanced stops that they have. This is where we can start getting a little bit more of that feel of where people are. I will say if you're putting in your Likert scale type of questions, back to that, that you want to make sure in thinking through, do you want to have an even or odd number? So we can have 5 different options. That means someone will have the ability to go in the middle and be neutral. Or do you want to have an even number and they're going to have to pick, are they more positive or negative of where we are and what we're doing there? ratings going across. This is things like thumbs up, thumbs down, 5-star, 1-star, those types, easy for people to be able to manage and move through. We've got multiple choice types of questions that are in here. And again, most of the survey platforms, which we'll talk about in a second, will give you the option to be able to choose some of these. Multiple choices, then when you're going to be able to come in, give people many choices that they can choose. And we can say if we want them to select one, what is your most important, or what is the one reason? Kind of like what we just had, our poll in the beginning. How is yours? Which coming back, actually, I think it was a combined response is what we got the most from our poll there. But it only allowed you to select one option, or you can have someone come in and say, choose all of the options that apply. Select all that apply. We're going to want to put that in your question number. Select all that apply, that they can come in and figure that out. All right, drop downs, kind of quickly go through. Drop downs are really nice when you've got a lot of options. It'll clean up your survey and it'll give people options that are in here. So one note, gosh, there's so much to dig into. I don't know why, Kate, we decided 1 hour was enough to talk about this. Multiple choice. We also want to make sure that each one of those choices, I know I'm going back a second, but are clear, concise, and that they're that we're giving most of the options that are available. Always good to have an other option with an open text. So for multiple choice, if you're saying, hey, how do you currently use research in your organization? Or what do you think about this? Have that open-ended other option. Ranking is fantastic when you're having somebody pull out a few different, hey, these are the top, or these are 3 reasons that I did for picking my healthcare, and then ranking. So we can really start saying what's a top choice, second, those types. Just kind of end with these ones that are slightly obvious here, but image choice. This is really, it'll kind of start making things more engaging with your respondents to be able to be in here. This is really great if you're doing branding, marketing. What does this image say to you? What do you think about this taglines, those types of things? And open-ended, Kate mentioned those before. They're fantastic to include. I always say that they're like gold in your responses. This is where we're going to get those unanswered questions that we might not know about or might not think about that we want to be able to dig into and have on there. So many more that are on here, but that's where we have. All right, let's think. Going through here.
So one of our big things, and we'll just really quickly, is to be able to make sure that you're reading your survey once you've designed it out loud as a group, and actually have different people who have not been a part of the planning and production of the survey to read it. It really is, we want to make sure, as we've said before, we want to make sure, especially if it's branded, that it has a voice and a tone that makes sense for your organization. And you want to make sure that as our brains, if we've been looking in and writing those questions for over and over again, our brain's going to automatically see something in the order that we think that it should be in, even though it maybe isn't typed that way. So you want to get somebody who's a bit separate from that and get them to be able to read it. You want to make sure also, are you speaking kind of like a human? Are you speaking to them again in the voice that you normally do versus, and sometimes like those satisfaction questions, are you very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, neutral? That makes sense in certain cases, but is there a way, depending on what your research objective and research questions are, that you can add a little fun and spunk to those answers that makes sense for your organization? And again, that may not make sense for you, but it's just thinking really about that you want people to be able to say, gosh, I know that this is the feel of the brand that I'm getting this survey from. So, and then also it's just getting people outside of the ones who wrote it to be able to check for grammar, spelling, all of those kinds of things. So make sure that you have some different people looking at it before you deploy your survey.
I love that. I know that we did a sports one, and it was on this kind of scale that we had, that I'm a raving fan. I paint my body every time I go to a game, all the way down to I'm not sure what, football or, what these ball sports are, of kind of what we have. And it's making it fun. It's conversation. This is a relationship that you're building with people and having your branding in there of what we have. Okay. Some more of the survey deployment logistics that are in here that I wanted to be able to talk through. There are countless platforms out there, all the way running from the gamut. That then you're going to have an annual subscription to, certain number of responses. We've used Qualtrics for years, fantastic, all the way down to SurveyMonkey, down to even Google Forms. There are free things that we can use. We do not discriminate against the tools that you want to use, depending on the types of surveys that you're doing. Just make sure, and all of them have abilities to branding, surveys, questions, those type of things. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through some of these pieces here. But let's make sure that when we're sending out, especially Kate talked a bit about if we are sending letters or if we're sending our survey to our current customers, prospects, people that know us, of sending an intro letter out to them, letting them know what they're doing. How are we going to be using these results? Why does it matter? What's happening? And we don't want to just be sending cold emails out that says your opinion matters. We want to be introducing them and bringing them into the conversation. This is, and depending on the types of survey, something that could be sent either from the president of the organization, the head of customer service, certain departments. Let's humanize this and personalize it of it going on here. We always get or suggest, Kate said, definitely Q&A on the inside before we launch this to anyone outside of. If you're a single person running your surveys, you want to make sure that somebody else uses that. That's Q&A beforehand. The second piece is we always do a soft launch. So what I mean by that is if I've got my population, I've got a list of 1,000 people that I'm going to be sending this to. I'm going to send this to 50, 75 people in the beginning. I want to soft launch it. Which means, I mean, it's launched, it's a soft launch, it's going to go out. And then we're going to start QAing as they come in and make sure, are people answering the questions the way that we thought that they were going to be answering it? Is there any confusion now that we're out there? And just make sure that everything is working the way that we want it to. So always suggest a soft launch. That could be within a few hours, a day, that kind of thing, before we fully launch. Reminders, for sure, if we're sending out an email, that we can be reminding people, and we should be taking a look to say the people that already responded, let's take them out. Let's send 2 or 3 reminders. Thank you so much for those that have responded. Let's start asking them and reminding them to take the feedback. One at the end, that then we're closing the survey. I'm going to talk about analysis and data analysis on the back end. But when we close a survey, so I'm jumping a little bit here, we always want to remember, because I think the one question we always get is how many responses is good. The second question most followed up is what's a good incentive to give to people, which we can get into a bit, but the best incentive that you can give to people, in our humble opinion, is to follow up with them and let them know that their voices were heard. So follow up with the respondents. And actually, I know I probably should have typed that, put something different. Follow up with everyone that was sent the email or sent the invitation to take the survey is our suggestion. With, hey, thanks so much for your feedback. We learned so much. This is what we learned. First of all, you don't have to put in this infographic or what we've learned. You don't have to put every single gory detail in there. This is, again, a marketing piece. And I want people even that didn't take the survey to get this, to say, hey, they listened to their constituent base. They're actually doing something. Next time we're going to send a survey, I'd love to get my voice to be heard too. So let's follow up with everybody. Okay. I think we are whizzing through this, Kate, but there is so many more things. So please, we will continue to follow up, but at least showing a lot of the different pieces that are in here. On the back end, I think one of our kind of last sections in here before we've got some more tips and tricks just on the end. But after we've closed our survey and you're using anything from, if it was a Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey, whatever the platforms that you have, typically there will be some analytics in here. But what we want to be able to make sure that we're doing is, I had here first of assigning numerical values. A lot of times when you're in here, if you've got types of questions, again, this isn't, you know what, we're going to have a few follow-ups, Kate, of these types of webinars that we're doing. But if we have things that we can just be running straight frequency odds, but how do we start assigning numerical values? If you've got your very somewhat satisfied, neutral, then we can start assigning 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to those on the back end. And then we can then start running your analysis, your frequencies, averages, those types of things. Going through and ensuring that we've got accuracy and complete. Did not mention that ahead of time, but we want to make sure when you're doing your survey questionnaire, and depending how large, small, putting some validating questions in there. Sometimes we can make sure if somebody answers this, how likely are they? So we make sure that we've got some good responses in here. There's all sorts of ways that you can be doing your analysis on the back end. The very first thing, though, kind of this statistical analysis and this descriptive, we want to be able to run just a summary on the front end of all of the results that are in here. This is to give us a gut check of what's in here. What are the trends, patterns? What are we seeing? A note on if we're running means or averages, those types of things. Let's look at some outliers that are in here to make sure, does it make sense? I remember we used to do them with salary or what their income was, right? When we're asking those type of questions. And if we've got one or two that's at the 20 million mark, that's going to be throwing off our averages. So we want to make sure, what are we in here? Do things make sense that we're in going on? Gosh, there's so much about sensitive questions too. And now that I just thought that asking those types of questions in here, but frequencies, this is going to be those high level. What's the count? What's the percentage for each one of the questions? Crosstabs are fantastic when you start coming in. This is when we can be comparing one or two questions together and to be able to figure out what's going on. Things like for age, for income, by product, how satisfied are they? So we can start doing all of this. Segmenting is huge, should be used across the board. These open-ended texts, there's so many tools out there right now that we can be using for that. But one thing that I always say is read the comments. You know, while there's text analysis type of software that can be looking at, and word clouds are fantastic. I think that everyone in senior leadership or running should be looking and seeing and reading open-ended comments so you can really get that context of what's in there. All right, my last one, and then I hand it back to you, Kate, is, you know, as Kate mentioned on the front end of trying to take a look and see what is the hypothesis, the assumptions going into this. What are we actually studying for? Let's make sure that then we know what those are on the front end. So now we can answer some of the questions on the back end. One of the, it makes me so sad when research is done and then it's not used on the back end. So a fantastic tip in order to get everyone across the board interested in this information that you're looking for is humanizing the data. You know, pulling pictures of people in here. If you're asking open-ended comments, if you're asking for feedback, kind of like that guy on the PwC with his dog, like, let's put his picture up there, and this is what Jenny Dinnan says. This is what Katie Rucker says. These are the people. Let's actually start humanizing it and not just get lost in the numbers of where we are. And as we're creating our decks that are in here, we want to make sure that we don't just chart, which is good to do. We've got some observational type of analysis that we can do, right? This is interesting. So I kind of put this in two buckets, observational versus actionable insight. So observational, what's interesting, thought-provoking, kind of what is that surface level stuff that's going on, which is important to know. And then how do we get back down there for our leaders, for our decision makers, of how can we use these to move forward in the organization? All right, Kate.
All right. I know we just threw a lot at you. And again, we're definitely available to ping us afterwards, and we can share any more details about anything that we just talked about. But we're just going to wrap up here with just 2 more slides of just some survey tips and tricks. Is just repeating here what we talked about. And first and foremost, which I know we've said, remember that these are people, not just numbers. Again, we truly believe at McKinsey that every voice matters. We believe that every response matters. And we truly are passionate about being able to engage with and work with organizations that truly care about the human on the other side of the interaction. We want to make sure that we're always thinking about action, not just observation. So asking questions that we are open to and willing to take action on the feedback that we're getting. We're not just adding more information there. We want to make it easy and worthwhile for our respondents. Again, as Jenny said, they have not been a part of this planning process. So we want to make sure that the flow and the process of experiencing the interaction with the survey is something that they feel valued, they feel appreciated, and that they don't feel like it was too cumbersome for them to be able to do.
Get something out of it on the back end. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We want to be able to challenge our own assumptions and hypotheses. And so again, that's not just asking the planning committee or the planning groups. We want to be able to understand the hypothesis and opinions and assumptions of the stakeholders at the executive level as well, so that we can be addressing those on the back end when we're doing some presentations of the survey results. And then we want to treat our surveys again as engagement opportunities, because they are. We really at McKinsey see that research and insights as a part of the marketing, an extension of the marketing efforts. Again, you put so much time, money, and effort into all of your branding to be able to get customers from prospects to becoming customers. And we want to be able to use these surveys as an extension of those efforts. Mm-hmm. And then just a few things around where projects sometimes can fall short. So market research doesn't or shouldn't happen just because it's supposed to. So if it's being something because you've been told by a certain group that you have to do a survey, that feeling can come through the way that you're writing and producing that survey result. So make sure that you actually are really looking at these surveys as, again, an experience and an extension of your marketing efforts, because the respondents will feel like it's just a have to, and not something that you really truly are excited about having them participate in the process with you. Again, we are not looking to kitchen sink the survey. We have to be respectful of the audience. And even though you maybe have their attention that one time and one budget, let's break it apart and say, what is the most important thing for the timeline that you have in front of you for you to be asking today? And then you can find other opportunities to be able to touch base with them later on. But we have to make sure that we are not covering too many topics in a survey, because you will get people dropping out. Lack of preparation or resources into putting feedback into action. Again, that comes back to actionable instead of observational. We want to be able to create enough time in the timeline to be able to do that prep work at the beginning, to really start making sure that all stakeholders in the different departments that could be impacted by the results you're getting are aware of the fact that the survey is going to be out there, and that there's agreement and alignment at an organizational level that change is going to happen based on these results. And if that hasn't been agreed upon, possibly just pause getting your survey out there. Make sure that that's in alignment first and foremost before you put that survey out there. Because if you put it out, you get results, and then it's 6 to 12 months later before change or action can start happening, then your results also become outdated. So you just really want to make sure that that buy-in is a part of the planning process. And then finally, on that last one there is just making sure that we think about any sort of issues or questions that we have around design and survey development.
There's so many logistics, that go into that piece there.
Yeah. So we really appreciate the fact that you guys spent your morning with us today on leap year, or leap day, and just this extra day of the year that we just really were excited to be able to share our passion for research, and really just want to be able to give you some tips and tricks to be able to really start enhancing your engagement with your customers and how you start integrating market research into your efforts there within your organizations. Again, here's our contact information, and we really look forward to being able to stay in touch with you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being on here.
Thank you.